Good evening, Jonathan, Sarah, and Emily. I'm responding to your presentation as a whole on one video. Uh, Otherwise, I'm going to end up making like 6 videos tonight, and as it's 7:52, I'm starting because I got home from work late today. I won't have time to make a million videos. So, my response to the presentation as a whole is essentially. I don't know if I watched them in the correct order. Um, but the first video I watched was Sarah's, who was discussing the effects of the sanctions on the Iranian economy, and I thought that was a really interesting perspective. Um, I hadn't even really looked into that. Because my thesis was that the sanctions are in general ineffective in getting the Iranian government anyway to do what it is that we want them to do, behave in the way that we want them to behave. So, the addition in there of the human rights perspective and hey, the Iranian people are suffering and they can't. What was the report I saw? They can't buy tomatoes. The tomatoes are too expensive. Like, oh my God, they can't buy tomatoes. How ridiculous that somebody shouldn't be able to buy tomatoes. The U.S. is a bunch of big meanies, and they should lift the sanctions because those poor Iranians can't buy tomatoes. I know that sounds like I'm making light of the issue, uh, but all I mean to say is human rights groups always try to find some sort of way to make things sound worse than they really are. And in reality, and this is sort of getting into Emily's portion too, with the effects of the sanctions on the healthcare issues, where she was talking about the lack of access to healthcare that the Iranian people have because of the U.S. sanctions. And even though there's no hard numbers for that, human rights groups pump it up, and they well, oh my goodness, they can't get their medicine, they can't, oh my God, help them. And the thing is, in a realistic world, unfortunately, this my argument against that is in a realistic world, unfortunately, it's always the people that are hurt. In every war, in every conflict, it's always the common people that are hurt. The government's job is to look out for the best interests of their people. And the Iranian government does that to an extent by going out to China and Russia and these other countries and supporting their economy that way. I mean, they have some GDP. Obviously, the sanctions aren't completely disabling. I mean, to where these people are just living in the Stone Age. They still have imports. They still have a regular economy. It's just severely limited because of the U.S. But I still I hadn't thought of the human rights aspect of that, and you don't when you talk about the U.S. versus Iran, I mean you're talking about government, so you don't consider that there's people affected, and of course the Iranians are gonna punish their people as a result in order to get support. It's just like what the Palestinians do when they talk about when the Israelis bomb a site. And then, as quick as they can, they go find a dead person and put him in there and say, "Look, they killed him," but that wasn't even from the bomb. It's to win a PR battle, and that's what I imagine the Iranian government's doing. They put more burden on their people than is necessary by doing whatever else with the money, and they say, "See, well, that's because of the U.S. and you can't buy tomatoes and you can't find medicine because of the U.S. It's the U.S.'s fault. Don't blame me. Blame the U.S." Well, as Emily pointed out, I mean, it's an argument that can be made. Well, stop building centrifuges, and maybe you can buy more stuff. But that leads me into what I wanted to say about Justin's portion, which was, we start off the video with the U.S. demands that Iran doesn't build nuclear weapons. What my kind of rhetorical question is, what right does the U.S. really have to say that? I mean, okay, as Sarah had pointed out in her portion, we can't take the chance that Iran nukes Israel because they said they want to wipe them off the map. Well, I mean, what do you mean we can't take that chance? Why is it our responsibility to stop it? Why are we involved in all this? Which is the point that we made in our presentation, what I tried to make in my presentation. U.S. policy is inconsistent. What is it that we want to do? Do we want to stop the nuclear program? Do we want to protect Israel? Is it the Strait of Hormuz? Is it oil? Do we just not like Iranians? Do we just not like the Ayatollah? Do we just... what is it? It's not consistent, and it's never clear. And what I feel like is that the Iranian government doesn't even know exactly what it is that we want. What do you want, U.S.? What do you want? You want us to stop building centrifuges? Do you want us to stop buying oil or selling oil to China? What do you want? Just tell us what you want, and we'll do it. And I don't even think that the U.S. bureaucrats, Obama on down, anybody in his cabinet, anybody on down bureaucrats, could tell an Iranian official exactly what it is that we want. You know, we make these policies, we make these UN resolutions, we make this, we make that, we pass this law, we pass that law, that resolution, this resolution, and it all basically means bleh. I mean, what are you saying to me? What is it that you want me to do? And just as a side note, I know this video went kind of long. I am responding to 3 videos in one. That jet that Justin showed, it doesn't even look airworthy. I mean, I work on jets. I'm not saying it's not airworthy. I know they're saying it's operational. I mean, hey, I've been around aviation a long time, and that thing doesn't even look like it could get off the ground. I know it looks a little bit like the F-35, and the F-35 can get off the ground, barely, although it's failing its tests. But, you know, that doesn't look like a real jet to me. I mean, just looking, that's the first time I've ever seen anything like that. And I do work in intelligence, so I have to say that's the first time I've seen anything like that, which means to me that it's something like pretty made up. I've never seen such a jet, and it doesn't even look like it would fly. The intakes on the top I saw in that forward view of the tan version, they're too small. They're too small for an airframe that size, and the wings. They look like variable angle wings. I don't know the purpose of that. And to me, that thing wouldn't be very stealthy if it is. It's way too big. It's like a hunk of metal. And so I don't believe that jet whatsoever. I'm going to do a little bit more research on my own just because now I'm curious. So thank you for that, Jonathan. But, man, that thing looks horrible. All right, thanks, and talk to you next week.